Herzlich willkommen zum Seminar 2 Spiel.
Welcome to the second seminar, to play out of the back three formation. In this seminar, we will be concerned with the practical training types. However, a quick recap back to seminar 1. In the first seminar, we have worked on the points 1 and 2. So, we laid the theoretic foundations, what dimensions of the back three we have, what we have to take care of, that it is not only 3 players and the rest of the team. What elements are in there? We have to train specifically. And then, under point 3.3i, we'll finally get to the types of training, annotations, and notes. How do I design my training? Passing types. This is relatively comprehensive, and my approach does not differ from others here. I love passing types, but I also say passing types in the sense of simply passing from A to B is a little too easy. It is important how I coach these passing types. A quick example, I have 3 players, they pass the ball around with longer and shorter passes. Now I could coach saying A passes to B, B passes to C, but I could also go in saying, you are centre back, you play to the 6. And here the other players have a whole different attention, and another connection with this is supposed to mean, come Sunday. And with this I have said the most important things. The players always have to know, what does this have to do with the competition on the pitch? And this is what it has to be like with passing types. This I can do with the setup, the distances, with the way I coach and talk to the players, what vocabulary I use. Beyond that, we look at small and big game types. Those differ in the number of players that are part of it. Small game types are 4 against 4, and everything larger than that are big game types that evoke the wanted behavior of the player. What do I mean by that? We will look at that on the next slide. But one more aspect before this. Both teams have a focus. I think, especially when wanting to improve the players, you can always coach them with a focus. When playing party games, 4 against 2 for example, you can coach offensively if you want, but you always have this chance to coach the players in the middle. And on the weekend when playing against the opponent, I always play against someone who also is coached. I always think that both teams, when talking the back three, have a focus where, as a coach, you have the chance to improve them. I've chosen a simple example to demonstrate the coaching role. We play from box to box here, 2 goals, 2 goalkeepers, and we play 8 against 8, red against blue. And here I go in as a coach and say, I want to train pressing in the midfield, or pressing when attacking, which we're doing here. Now, the game goes as normal, without rules, no distinct orders, and when the desired behavior blue does not develop, as seen here, I have to interrupt as a coach and say, stop, blue team, we want to play offensive pressing, attack. Until I even tackle the topic of behavior in offensive pressing, until I work on these details, I think we should initiate provocative rules that can be zones, rules, lines. The creativity is unlimited here. And here this could mean I set up the provocative rule. Red leads 2-0, and we only have 3 minutes left. What will the blue team do? They will probably not wait in the back, they have to score. They'll attack by themselves. And here I have the players and the behavior I want to have them in, and can now start working on the details. Now, I can say, okay, stop. I want to see this and that when pressing. I want to go in here, and this changes my role as a coach extremely. Now I'm someone that criticizes the players. I can help the players in their behavior. This is a fact that can change the coaching role lastingly. What also is important here, when only accentuating the focuses, but elsewhere, let them play with no distinct rules. I'll go into more detail later. Then I coach all other aspects of the competition, of course. Here, for example, after 2 minutes the score is 2-2. Red will not attack anymore, and blue won't attack up front. Therefore, I can coach other things, or other things will be worked on. But this focus, offensive pressing, will be talked about more often. Back to my favorite chart. I showed this in the first part of the seminar already. This means I can choose a play type. Other than with training types, it is possible here. What exact phases do I want to coach? Okay, I want to coach situations where having the ball or losing the ball, then I'm done here and start over. But I can also say I coach this entire part. That is what I advocate. Why? Put simply, when my number 6 loses the ball, he can't stand still afterwards, but he has to behave in a certain way as well as the outer defender.
machen. Das heißt, immer diese ganzen komplexen
I always say, always train everything.
trainieren. Das ist immer so das, wo ich der Meinung
This is always an advantage.
also möglichst alle Phasen trainieren, möglichst auch viele
Try training all phases with as many focuses as possible, and try to emphasize that with specific provocative rules.
Ein Hinweis bzw. ein Appell, den man ja in vielen Sachen sieht. Wir Trainer sind dann immer so die Fehler-Suchmaschinen.
As coaches, we are always the ones looking for mistakes and can tackle possible problems directly. This is to get coached too.
Auch so ein bisschen ausgebildet. Aber ich finde es immer, das merkt
But
man,
I always think there is another way to coach the players, and this is what I articulated here.
Spielern das beizubringen. Das habe ich hier so ein bisschen formuliert. Das war eine Formulierung, die habe ich in einem anderen Vortrag gehört.
I heard this in another
So
presentation.
ein bisschen prägnanter. Also
Catch them when they're good.
Das heißt, ich kann auch
Tell the players when they're doing something good.
wieder kurzes Beispiel. Ich habe zwei
Quick example. I have two centre backs. One makes mistake A, the other does this specific thing perfectly fine, dribbling, for example.
Also der erste Innenverteidiger
The first centre back dribbles badly for whatever reason, and the other dribbles very well.
und der andere macht das Andribbeln richtig gut. Jetzt kann ich reingehen und sagen, ich kann den ersten
I could either criticize the first centre back here and say, do this better, or I could praise the other player for doing something good.
rein und lobe den anderen.
This is what catch them when they're good means.
Catch them when they're good.
I can tell a player who's a good dribbler that he's doing something correctly here.
Genauso gut reingehen, Stopp sagen, das hast du gut gemacht, weil so, weil.
This has two effects.
Zwei Effekte.
For one, I strengthen the self-confidence of the defender,
Verteidiger, den ich gerade gecoacht habe, der was gut gemacht hat,
and the other hears this and maybe can work with this information and try to copy the behavior.
jetzt mit und kann das eventuell verarbeiten.
This can have a synergetic effect.
gemacht hat, dann kann ich das ja auch so machen. Das heißt, ich habe so eine Synergie,
Of course, this does not mean I cannot criticize my players.
nie mehr kritisieren darf. Wenn der Innenverteidiger das dann immer noch nicht hinkriegt.
If the other defender still plays the wrong way, I have to choose a different approach. But generally, it is possible to use players doing things the right way.
Wenn Spieler was gut machen, kann ich da vielleicht auch Potenzial herausziehen. Nach diesen kleinen Hinweisen, die
After those sets of advice, the requirements. The requirements follow the theoretic basics of the game situations. This means, what do I need?
Qualität ist immer
I always need passing quality.
mehr genau.
Passing quality always is precision plus tempo.
Heißt,
Precision and tempo vary, but this combination is passing quality for me. What else do I need? I need passes through opposing players. Such a pass can be played from a centre-back too. If Holger Badstuber, for example, dribbles and passes the ball through two Dortmund players to pass it to Lewandowski, this qualifies as such a through pass.
vorne der Zehner,
A through pass does not always have to be passed to the 10. Iniesta passes the ball through and Messi scores. Through passes are possible all over the pitch. Then I need a good first touch. We just had good solutions where I had to start dribbling right from the pass, and there I need a good first touch. What do I mean by that? Logically, the first contact. This can entail a lot. If I have a lot of space in front of me, the first touch has to have the ball go 3 to 4 meters up front, so I can take up my pace. If I stand under pressure, I might have to receive the ball closer to my body or even in a direction opposite to the opponent, or if an opposing player runs towards me, I'll have to go in another direction with the first touch. This is what we understand by first touch. Other requirements would logically be to start dribbling because a 3 versus 2 situation means to dribble for the centre-backs. Therefore, I have to train this, and then I have to take care of the coordinated routes of the others.
diese letzten
So this one goes that way,
sind nicht so genau für die
if he goes that way, and those specific solutions have to be in the back of the coach's head, not transmitted to the players directly, because the coaches have to have specific solutions on the pitch for specific situations.
parat haben müssen. Kommen wir endlich zu
Okay, let's get to the training types.
also mal Übungen,
This will be a mix of types of exercises and
die auch direkt
games.
hintereinander, können also so direkt
Sometimes they can be right after one another and be transitioned into everyday training through switching between playing and exercising or leading up to a large game type.
enden, so trainiert
We here begin with a passing game between the positions.
Positionspassspiel.
This means here we have the case that we've already created the back three with 2 centre-backs and 1 number 6. Here, 8 or 10 we already have in the zone and have the dummies as opposing players and up front another player.
Was ich hiermit jetzt unbedingt
What I want to train here is the situation of 4 against 2 or 3 against 2 with the number 8.
und da kann
Into this I can integrate various combinations.
die erste
The first one being, the ball is passed, he dribbles. Here I could go into detail if necessary. The ball is passed into his way. The first contact dropping the ball off clearly to the front here. In the animation, I'll talk more about what the central players have to do here. Then he stops. The ball is shifted again and then carried through the other position to the front. And then, of course, we could develop several passing combinations to finally score the goal. What has to be close to an actual game is the movement of the back three here. After that, it is about having the exercise finish smoothly.
danach ist es einfach auch, damit die Übung gut zu Ende läuft. Gucken wir uns
Okay,
das mal bitte
let's look at this in moving pictures.
Das heißt,
Here, the 6 in between the centre backs, or if we play in a back three already, the 3 centre backs.
Wir sehen hier das Andribbeln und
We see here the dribbling, and now I could go in and say, you are the centre back, you start dribbling.
hingehen und sagen, du bist Innenverteidiger, du dribbelst an. Jetzt kann ich aber auch sagen,
But I could also say here, when he dribbles, the other players have to get open.
sondern wenn der andribbelt, müsst ihr euch auch anspielbar zeigen.
because oftentimes it is obvious which passing combination is going to happen, and the players know that they could relax because they will not be passed to before the 5th or 6th passing station. But I always think to integrate them from the beginning. Maybe passing to them directly is helpful. This will make the players too, like it be on the pitch, always be open and ready to receive the pass and maybe run for nothing once. Here you see the pushing in the back. You could also tackle in more detail. The ball will be intercepted and shifted to the other side. Here you nicely see the shifting movements. Up to this point, I've made it close to a realistic game here. Now, in the sense of the exercise, you could vary a bit and go into more detail on a couple of other focuses. So, the ball will be passed to the front, dropped off and then immediately shot into the goal. This player might have to get into this passing hole to get some space here. This is what this arrow is supposed to signify. He now keeps on dribbling, plays deep, and now we here have the mentioned passing route, and so this space is open, the 6 or 8 gets up in front here. The ball will be passed in, the players stay in their positions, and now I can play another variation. This, as coaches, we have to coach again and again. When he dribbles here, you push behind him. When he stops, you have to be open, but can still push a little further. Those would be coaching points I could go into here. There is another variation to get to the goal. He tries to get some space, goes deep, receives the ball, and then, with a double pass around the dummy number 10, here we make our way to the goal. Therefore, I here have a passing type. 5 players, 3 or 4 of them are positioned close to an actual game, and especially during the first run, I have very detailed routes to go about specifically. How do I dribble? How does the pass have to be played? Into the way, and then the pass is taken on nicely. If I stop, how do the other players have to behave? And this is a good first introduction. I can vary this, of course, when playing it with 2 groups parallelly, the other group starting from the side, for example, then I have 10 players occupied. Or I do it with changing positions. I can conduct this freely, going on to another passing type. Here, we will be concerned with the vertical passing game. This might look a little complicated with all the arrows here and all the numbers, but it is easier than it looks. We have 3 situations. These 2 stations down here are 1 station, more or less, a central position here, and another one up here. The distances I could create realistically here, and you here too see demonstrated in this zone where on the pitch it happens. But you could make the zones larger or smaller as well, depending on the passing distances you'd want to have played here. And here we could incorporate different varieties. Here it is displayed as such that player A dribbles from this position. The dribbling does not have to be complicated, but has to symbolize that the player does not start from standing still. Because oftentimes when doing passing types, the ball is still, and then when starting the passes, played directly, and therefore often not too good. But when doing a passing type, every coach knows that, and the first pass arrives perfectly from higher tension right out of the dribbling, then the entire combination is better. So, always watch out for the first pass being played well. There we come from a good tension. Short dribbling, the 6, here player C, gets into this position of the 6, then we've recreated the dynamic back 3. Then we could go about questions of timing. The ball is passed, with the played ball B goes deep, a little higher, and receives the ball. Then, for example, the combination goes through the central player here that also made a move to get open before. Then the ball is played into the deep, dropped off, and played to the other side in a combination. The only complicated thing here is the change of position, which on both sides is not executed clockwise, but against the clock. Those 3 players switch against the clock, and once, here F, C and B switch against the clock. Why this is, you can see in the animation, but first the process again. As I've said, the core aspect that I want to emphasize here is to start dribbling. The 6 goes in, stop, and now I again have this exact combination. I here have my back 3 formation the way I want to have them during the game, have my central player open here, and could create different combinations from here. Here again, okay, he could go deep, receives the ball in his way, and maybe passes directly in here. Then the ball is taken up. In a 2-contact game, the ball is played deep. Then the ball goes over the 3rd one, is dropped off here again, and then played over to the other side in a combination. And because the player came out of this position, and is positioned higher here, it makes sense to create the change of position the way we have it here, on both sides, counterclockwise. You could get out of many other varieties here too. We see another one. But, and this is important, I can vary all that to the back with all possible passes, can lob the ball, play short passes or integrate more dribblings, but this first aspect, how to set up the back 3, I can train here in detail. The ball will be played to the other side again here, and now is played to the 9 directly, for example, bounced off, and then I get to the other position, then the ball is dribbled back. There, fantasy has no limits. The main thing is to always watch out for quality and the correct distances. You could make this a game in zones also. Relatively simple, penalty box to box. 4 zones, but only 3 are of interest at first. For example, red has the ball and in 3 zones plays 2 against 2. In this first zone, the ball is played 2 against 2, in the second zone, 2 against 2, and in the third zone, 2 against 2 also. The last zone is to run in, play in, to score goals. That's why it functions as an offside line. When blue has the ball and is open from the other side too, then it all turns, and this is the last zone, here the open zone, and this would be the offside line. An added rule to evoke the focus a little would be that the offensive team, here red, can create a majority the way they want to. As a coach, I would say here, the team that has the ball can leave its zones and create a majority. All that in moving pictures looks as such. Here we have the zones marked in, the zones, the offside line, in white. The goalkeeper opens the game, and now the ball is passed into the first zone, for example, and now you see already, maybe the first 2 or 3 actions are 2 against 2. Then the red team might understand, okay, it might make sense to create a majority here, and another player goes in. He'll do this by himself, which leaves me as a coach to go in and direct this a little, saying, okay, go into this position a little more, do this coordinated with the runs. Look out that the open one here is not under pressure. Watch out for, if he creates a majority here, the other one might also come in as a potential receiver. This means I can go in there and project all the elements from the basics and from the game solutions into this play. And here, for example, only to demonstrate this game type in a little more detail, he, the centre-back, the entire base, could, because it is a rule, cross the entire pitch and score the goal up front to create a majority. This means this is the first example for a game type that I can interpret freely, and that has other elements integrated as well. Here we have a possible game that includes the third one. Vertical game is possible. You could play a possible high ball here. But more often than not, because it's the rule, the red team or the team with the ball will try to create a majority, and there I can intervene directly and try coaching in these elements. Here we look specifically at the first touch. Simply, how can I train the first contact and train this in different variations? Here we simply have a central field. I wrote the exact number meters down here. When reducing the size of the field smaller, it'll be more difficult, logically. We have 2 teams with 6 players respectively, red and blue. They pass the ball around, but 1 player of each team stands here in this field. When the player is passed to, I can firmly state, okay, when going through this goal of caps or this one, made up of dummies, you have to orientate outward with the first contact. Or I can also say, through the goal you're passed to through, you have to come out of this one too. And then I already have a clear consciousness of the players that here have to watch out for their first contact. I provoke this here a little bit. But normal passes around the field are possible too, maybe a high ball across the field. Relatively open with this little focus. For the exercise to work out, the player that passed the ball has to occupy the position in the center, and then the ball goes around. A couple of details we work out in the animation. We have 2 teams, in this case white and red, that openly pass the ball to each other, and here we have the aspect of the ball being passed in, and him having to take out the ball through one of the other goals. Now, as a coach, I have to watch out for how my player orientates himself. This, for example, can be exemplified with Xavi from Barcelona, who in a single minute, 50 to 60 times, maybe looks over his shoulder to orientate himself, to see how many opponents he has around him, where they are, and this is important here because if this player here gets the ball, he can't go out through this goal because here might be another team member or a player of the other group. This you might vary so when having more players, you maybe set up 3 groups. Then here suddenly we have 3 players. In this case, normally 2 of the little goals are closed. That means I have to orientate, look over my shoulder, and have this memorized that I can see everything and can dribble through the right goal with the first contact. Maybe another detail here. He can always orientate when the ball is on its way. When red is on the ball here, to be able to receive the ball, he has to be in a good position already. Context again. When a team member has the ball, I have to be open. Are the passes underway? I can orientate. In the animation, it is displayed as such. He plays the ball in here, dribbles out, goes in himself. White team does it the same way, plays in, dribbles out, goes in, and on the outer sides, the players shift around. And this is what it is demonstrated like here. With this I can train the first touch. When I've set up this field, I go into the right game type. I keep the central field on the red team member, but I create a square around it. And now for the first time, both teams have a focus that I can coach, that work together. Red has the ball and passes the ball on the outside of the square. Those passes may not be intercepted at first, that we can alternate afterwards. Blue only defends the inner space, may not get in or out here therefore, only this inner space here. They may intercept the passes played in the center. That is the goal for the red team, and the player, as soon as the ball is passed in here, has to dribble out of this zone under pressure. In the moment the ball is passed in here, the blue team can get in here too and put pressure on the opponents. If blue conquers the ball, they have 4 goal targets to pass through. Red may reclaim the ball. When I created the game type, I had 1 player and no limit of contacts here. I did not say 1 or 2 contacts, he was allowed to dribble freely, and then I've seen that he dribbles here and passed, no look, the ball through here, which also is a good solution. By leaving it to the players, creative solutions might be created. Of course, I can work in here and say, okay, the 3 players that pass the ball around right now, how do they have to do this? Okay, shift quickly and the aspect of the back 3. In the back 3 formation, the ball has to be shifted quickly. Where does the ball have to be passed? Into the course as much as possible, and so on. In the animation, we worked on the details a little. Here we see the zone white defends, except this little space red is inside of, and the red team passes the ball around. As I've said, you can vary this, and they may intercept the passes. Now the ball is played in, and he has to dribble out. Now it is his job to, before receiving the ball, orientate himself. Where did the opponents come from? This means here we're back with the aspect of forward orientation that I talked about before. And now under opposing pressure, the first contact is deciding, I have to get out of this field. White may attack here. The red player goes back in here to make the game type work. On the outside, the players shift around. The whites have not conquered the ball here, therefore the game type goes on. I can also disregard dribbling and first touch a little and focus on the passing game under pressure. This means he may pass out the ball with 2 contacts. For example, he does not have to dribble, and this is what he does here. Take on the ball with his right and pass with the left. White has not gotten the ball again, but may get to the ball here another time. Here we see an incomplete pass, and White may counter now. This is what I meant. Train all game phases. White defended the passing ways, got the ball, and now has a goal. When a team gets the ball during a real game, the game is not over there either. They counter too. That I want to incorporate here. And for the red, I could work on wholly different aspects of counter-pressing, for example. The player close to the opponent can attack here. That's what he can do here. The player far from the opponent could cover the goal. Here I can go over the entire process of having the ball, losing it, and maybe back to recapture it. Here we have a couple of exemplary routes. Red won't get the ball and white scores. Here, this leads to a simple game type, but many focuses I can work on. Theoretically, I could repeat the game type and work on different aspects. It is important to focus on the offensive shifting movement. We're still working on the back 3, the first touch and forward orientation. Another game type, also relatively simple. We solely have a field here. I displayed this without the exact lengths because this depends on how good my players are. I can increase the field and maybe see more successes. If I make it smaller, this will make it harder. And the task is simple. We have 2 neutral green players, freely passing the ball until one decides to dribble into the field here. In this moment, we're playing 4 against 3. The goal it is to reach the other side. Here, I have to think about when actually going into the dribbling. When do I go into the dribbling? As soon as the team members pass the ball into my way, how do I take on the ball? I have space, but I will go and take up my pace now. So here I have training for my centre-backs that dribble and play the first pass. If blue conquers the ball again, the focus changes. In the animation, you can see how to play out the majority because I play 4 against 3 here, and this is the goal of dribbling at the start, to play out a majority situation, which we had with 3 against 2 in the back 3. In this example, he dribbles in, I play 4 against 3, and the goal is to pass up front. 2 against 1 played out, the player goes back to his position. Discipline in the positioning here. The centre-back goes back after having played the pass. Here, a second example. If 4 against 3 is played out, the other side is reached. A good game type to train these elements. I haven't animated this. This would be a possible exercise. This means I give out the jerseys differently and say there are no neutral players, but they are red and blue, and then it is a pre-exercise to warm up. Dribbling without pressure. Pass, 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 over. One might be out. Maybe he has to keep the room open. Then I might work some elements out going into dribbling. How do I do this? Elements of the passing game. A little pre-exercise. Another game type you can get a lot out of, like a pre-exercise for a game type. Then I have 3 fields with red, blue and green players, and I have 2 balls. Now red and green play together, and the blues with each other. Blue here is the disruptive group for me. They play free passes with 1 or 2 contacts, with and without tempo. They can take it easy there. We coach the outer groups here. After 3, 4 or 5 passes, or when you see a gap, you have to shift the ball over from this to this zone. Here I have the elements of the through pass. I have to time the pass, it really goes through the 2 players or the gap. I can be creative and say, after 3 passes you have to, but also you can pass when you see a gap. But I have to watch out for someone on the other side to be open. This is demonstrated in this animation. We have 2 balls in the game. I can alter that saying, the white group also has a ball. Then the balls go back and forth parallelly, and it'll be more difficult, but worth a try. The red and the blue group each have a ball here. The blue group keeps the ball running, and the red group here awaits a gap. We see here the white player that also waits for a gap, and the ball will be played through there from zone to zone. A centre-back that passes to the 9 or 7, and they then keep the ball moving. Red moves towards the gap so we can play through them here. And I train the elements of the through pass. This is variable. Every minute, every 2 minutes or so, the whites here are in the middle and have passed a couple of balls, but blue gets to do their through passes too. Of course I can work this into a game type. Therefore I here have a 4 against 2 and later we'll have a 4 against 2 as well. The coach plays the ball into this field, for example. Red has the ball, 2 blue players have to get in here and they play out the 4 against 2. Again, you could say, after 4 passes, you can pass the ball over. When this is accomplished, displayed by the red arrow, the 2 blue players have to get back into the field, and these 2 blue players in this field here, and then here the same game would go on. As soon as the blue captures the ball, a change happens. This means blue gets the ball here, then the blue players get in here, and then this lower field is occupied with blue players, and 2 red players have to get over here and try to capture the ball because the coach already plays in the ball again. In the animation, we see some more details. For example, here I want to stop real quick. We here see the role of the by the coach plays in the balls. This way, as a coach, I can control it. On the one hand, I can actually create small successes playing a good ball in, or I can focus on helping one team playing the ball in while the other team is not ready yet. Of course, they'll have to work harder when I play the ball in, while not everyone is ready yet. This would be a small advantage. Therefore, it makes sense for the coach to play in the ball in those 4 against 2 or 5 against 2 situations. Here the ball is played to white and blue attacks. Depending on how difficult I want this, I can say 2 or 1 contacts. 1 contact is harder, of course. Okay, they played 4 passes now, and now the ball is played over. Now the change happens. The blue players that were trying to get to the ball go into the center, and the other 2 blue players have to attack red. Red is playing combinations, and now that the pass missed, a change would occur. Blue is now the offensive team as a reward, and red has to conquer the ball. Therefore, the coach plays in a new ball, quick or slowly, depending on his aim here. Red has to go over, and the other 2 reds have to get into the center. Here I can alter something. When I want to train through passes under pressure, I could have those 2 red players defend the passways in the space here. So, if white would theoretically pass the ball over here, he could intercept it. Another element to steer the game into a direction. This is what happens here. They are actively trying to stop the passes, capture the ball, and then, changing, white has to get over.
Weiß muss rüber ins Feld, Weiß muss
White has to go into the field here, and White has to position himself in the center.
sich positionieren. Eine weitere Variation wäre auch zum Beispiel
Another alternative would, for example, be that if Blue were to lose the ball here, they get a short time window to recapture it.
vom Ballbesitz.
Then we'd be back with the combination of ball possession, losing the ball, and trying to win it back.
Auch hier 5, 6, 7 Variationen.
With all this variety, I always have to watch out. What are my players able to do?
Achten muss, okay, was kriegen meine Spieler schon hin?
Can I go one step further?
Kann ich die zentralen Spieler
Can I activate the central players here?
verteidigen? Oder nicht?
Should they defend the passing spaces already?
Gucken wir uns das 4 gegen 2
Let's look at the 4 against 2 in more detail.
Hier habe ich es mal in einer etwas
I've set it up in a different variation
Das
here.
Feld ist sehr breit.
This means that the field is very wide, but not that high.
Das heißt, 5
Therefore, 15 times 8 meters, as it says here, and the 4 players play 4 against 2 in the corner.
im Eck. In dem Fall ist es mal
In this case, they play outside the corner, A, B, C, and D, and then it is, as we know it, the one losing the ball has to get in the middle.
verliert, muss er in die Mitte. In der Animation ist es gleich so gelöst, dass
In the animation, 2 players always team up. C and D, for example, team up, and if one of them loses the ball, both have to get in the middle.
verliert, müssen halt beide rein und beide dürfen raus. In der Animation
We see this in the animation.
das hier also ein Feld.
We see a pair, the blues, the 2 reds, and the 2 whites, that in the moment are in the middle, and the coach directing everything. And in the end of the animation, we see an important coaching aspect.
Vorher aber ganz normale Aspekte.
But before normal aspects, through passes and also shifts. Because the field is much wider than it is deep, I here have hinted the back 3 elements, so I can play through. This is the basic change of position. Blue lost the ball.
Verloren. Der Ball wird wieder ganz normal durchgespielt und gleich haben wir
The ball is played through, and then we have an element becoming obvious because they stand outside of the field.
Felder stehen, nämlich diesen hier. Die 4 Spieler stehen ja
The 4 players stand outside and not inside the field.
ja nicht auf.
They now won't move as far here because the passes still have to be played through the field.
Aber
But I here also have the element.
zum Beispiel mein
If this would be my centre back here, he doesn't have to be open here because the field ends here, but he can step back like a centre back and distance himself, not finding himself under pressure.
Das heißt, die Außenspieler,
The outer players therefore have the opportunity to focus on the passing game entirely, right?
also die sind
This route of the centre back, for example, actually distanced and now cannot be put under pressure.
und die Weißen.
And White now is only allowed to cover the passing ways.
Kommen wir zu einer Spielform, die jetzt
Let's get to a game type that works precisely towards the back 3 and enables this formation to be seen.
ja, genauer auch sieht. Trainer spielt
The coach plays the ball in here.
hier wird
In the first half, they play 3 against 2. 3 against 2 strikers.
wenn wir in der Mitte
In the middle, we have a passing goal that the ball has to be passed through, and on the outside, 2 goals that have to be dribbled through.
ja, wir wollten ja den Halb
This works because in the half spaces, the players are supposed to dribble.
dann den anderen Trainer
Here, it is the goal to reach the other coach on the other side. Of course, neutral players can do this too, that's no problem. If I don't have enough players, I can set up a pass goal too. This means going over, passing to the coach, that is it, in principle.
den Ball erobert.
If the blue team conquers the ball, they have 4 mini goals they can counter to.
In der
In the animations, we will see variations and details to this.
ein paar Details. Jetzt kann ich wieder
As a coach, I can go in here and say, those are the rules. Here you have to dribble, and here you have to pass.
das heißt, es wird
The players will position themselves according to the formation.
von der Aufstellung her werden die Spieler sich schon automatisch so hinstellen. Die beiden Stürmer werden sich
The 2 strikers will do this because the passway has to be covered, and here the red player will enter
Habe
soon.
ich gleich automatisch
Then,
einfach nur
I automatically have a situation that is close to a real game experience.
nie vorkommt. Jetzt kann ich
Here I can go into detail again.
dribbelt an, die beiden
He dribbles, those 2 push from behind. This is what I have to coach. The goal is to pass to the other coach. As long as that is the case, they can be passive. Later, they will all be actively involved. This I can coach. The situation I can coach distinctively. This is my back 3. The direction of the game is towards down here, and here is the passing goal. This means if there is a passing goal, there has to be an open player. Therefore, I automatically have a movement at the position of number 6 being occupied.
der kommt hier rein.
He comes in here, and the ball will be moved on.
In dem
In this case, he will be passed to, and we get to the other coach.
eine Lösung.
Also a solution.
Eine weitere Möglichkeit.
Another opportunity would then be to have all players active.
Das heißt, es ist nach wie vor die Linie. Nach
This stays the line, still dribbling and still passing goals, but as soon as he dribbles over here, White can attack normally.
normal attackieren. Der hier darf auch
He can, as soon as he receives the ball, be attacked too. Here, I then have more opposing pressure and maybe a more realistic gameplay.
Ball wird rübergespielt, man sieht
The
auch,
ball is played over, White actively shifts, attacks. He has to solve this with one contact. He can dribble here, gets to the coach, and this makes this a more dynamic game type.
damit wir das auch noch mal.
Here, White captures the ball, and now I have the aspect of what is Red doing. Which players will attack? Him, for example, he is Colsby. What's he doing? He covers the goal at first, but also controls the opponent. And for White, it would be a little depressing if some players would only be defensive players that conquer the ball and end the game.
Dann ist das immer auch ein bisschen deprimierend. Deswegen
Therefore, you can organize this as a competition and say, okay, if White conquers the ball, they can go towards the goals and get their points just like Red if they make it to pass to a coach.
Trainer anspielen.
In the last seconds, this happens. Let's not take the point away from White.
Weiß hätte jetzt 1.
White would have made a point here.
Hier ist jetzt mal eine Spielform.
Here, a game type looking like a mathematic task, but I promise it is not that complicated, in which I want to show a basic element like the back three formation that we know from the first theoretic seminar, and that we can intertwine here.
Seminar aus Seminar 1 kennt, diese Elemente, dann auch mit anderen Sachen verknüpfen kann. Also, das heißt,
Hence, it is not always that when I train the back three, everything has to be about low passes and solutions. We'll get to this in more solutions later, but I can connect this with focuses.
zum Beispiel verknüpfen.
Here, for example, we have a game about the second ball out of the back three, for example.
Aber
But the elements of the back three formation I want to have worked out neatly. Let's go through this. Up here we have 3 plus 1 against 2. That are the 3 plus the 1, they pass 2 against 2.
2.
This is the known situation from the back three against 2 strikers.
Spieler brauche ich, das haben wir schon
This player I need in this game type especially because if this player is here, 2 could move freely and then it would not be as realistic.
Die spielen auf 2
They play 2 plus 1. We have another zone up here with 2 reds plus 1. One that can always intervene, the ball near 1, against 3 blues plus 1 who stands in the center here and can get involved too.
plus 1, der hier im Zentrum steht, der sich auch einschalten darf. Ziel soll es jetzt sein.
It is the goal here to steer towards the second field with a second ball to involve it with a high ball.
Und da kann man
This we can get a variety of opportunities from.
Möglichkeiten rausziehen.
For example, defensively,
Defensiv und
both teams need a focus.
einen Schwerpunkt geben,
If blue defends the ball directly and passes back into this zone, they make points.
dann kriegen die schon mal
Or, you can see this here, blue can openly try to shoot a goal.
und dann frei aufs Tor schießen. Als Belohnung.
But I can also set focuses that are oriented towards the offense.
In der Animation
In this animation, A is explained again and B is displayed with its variations in more detail. The goalkeeper passes. Here we have the first zone, out of which the ball is supposed to be played with a high pass.
werden soll. Hier wird der Ball, und da sind wir wieder Elemente Dreierkette, schnell verschoben.
Here the ball is shifted quickly, and to be able to pass a high ball, a team member has to lay the ball in front of him, at least a little.
Ball ja kurz vorlegen können. Ist ja genauso wie
This is comparable with the dribbling, where I need to lay the ball in my front too. So we have the same element included with a different connection.
Der legt sich jetzt den Ball zum
Here he has the space to do this because he has been shifted well, and now I can intervene and say this ball near position can get involved.
Die ballnahe Position darf sich mit
This one, for example.
Dann habe ich immer noch
Then I still have a relation of 1, 2, 3, 4 against 3 offensive players, just like in the real game.
Gleichzahl oder
Because equality or majority in the last third, only very few teams have. Most of the time I have to be able to work out chances when the other team has the majority, but I can also decide, depending on where the ball is played to, that this is the ball near player, or this is the ball near player and they may intervene respectively. This is demonstrated here as an example. Header, dropped off, and then it is played through perfectly. Back to the start. The goalkeeper opens the game.
hier wird wieder gespielt.
Here the elements of the back three again. As a reminder, the player is open and can shift here. This means I always have triangles from this central position.
Der zentralen Position. Der wird jetzt mal angespielt.
He is played to, lets the ball drop off, and then we have the high ball.
Zentrale Spieler vielleicht
Now the central player maybe is the ball near player, and now I have integrated the opponent again.
erobert den Ball.
This means blue captures the ball, and now have those mini goals, those counter goals at their disposal. You can also alter that and coach different focuses.
Andere Schwerpunkte trainieren. Blau schießt jetzt hier das Tor. Hat gut gekonnt.
Blue scores here and has countered well.
Torwart eröffnet wieder.
Goalkeeper opens the game.
Der Ball wird wieder
The ball is played out. Another high ball now. Red receives the ball. Blue recaptures the ball again. And now I go in. I call this opening.
Wenn es zu einem Umschaltmoment kommt,
This means when blue conquers the ball, then this field opens.
öffnet sich dieses Spielfeld. Das heißt, alle Spieler, die
All players in this field may now get involved. Red would be allowed to cover the goal here. Red can intervene here. Blue can intervene here.
geht aber auch,
But I can also open this field, for example.
zum Beispiel das hier. Das heißt, jetzt
Now he can intervene here.
hatten wir vorhin, wenn wir wieder ins Theorie
When mentally reverting to the theoretical seminar, we had said, remaining defense, the ball far outer back does not push higher. When we lose the ball, he does not necessarily have to go back, but he definitely has to get to the counter to stop the ball from being passed into this half space out here. And this would be a moment where I say, okay, this field is completely open. He's captured the ball and the route of the red player is realistic because he does not go over here, but firstly covers his goal.
was aber auch möglich ist,
But it is also possible to leave it completely open. Therefore, I say, okay, in the moment the game shifts. It is completely open. Blue can play with low balls into all goals, red can recapture the ball, and then I have a game until the ball is out.
ich kann das ganze Feld öffnen,
I can open the entire field, but I can also leave out the outer players and limit the field to this central area.
dann habe ich wirklich nur hier vertikal spielen, habe wirklich auch die
Then I truly only have this vertical game, have the remaining defense of my back three incorporated.
wieder reingehen, wie ist dein Abstand zum Stürmer? Achte darauf, dass du
Watch out that you're not too close, or you'll be played over. But you also have to watch out that you're able to control him when he receives a low ball.
Hier ist das jetzt einmal wieder dargestellt.
We have this displayed here. Blue gets through, shoots from distance, and even hits the goal.
Und die letzte Variation, die letzte Möglichkeit.
The last opportunity would be the long ball coming, Blue defending it, and additionally, Blue can finish freely with no intervention by Red.
Darf Blau frei abschließen. Auch als Tor. Rot darf dann nicht eingreifen. Also eine sehr
A complex game type you can get a lot out of.
nicht viel rausholen kann. Eine Spielform, die auch
This does not only train the back three, but many more aspects you can interpret as you want.
so zurechtlegen kann. Also man hat das ja gesehen.
We have seen that you can take different excerpts and activate them. With different players, we are always in good numerical relations the way they are in the game.
So wie sie im Spiel sind. Damit wollte ich einfach nochmal
It is not so much about what is shown here, but what I, as a coach, can do with this in detail.
konkret machen kann, dass das eigentlich interessant ist. In der nächsten Spielform sind
In the next game type, we are back with a game in zones. We just had a zone game, and now we can enlarge it, playing 10 against 10 from box to box.
wieder von 16er zu 16er. Die Regeln sind
The rules principally stay the same.
erste Zone ist 2
We have 4 zones again.
gegen 3.
First one where they play 2 against 2, second zone is 3 against 3, third zone 2, and the fourth zone is 2 against 2 again.
Zonenspiel.
Red tries to score playing through the zones and blue tries to defend that and counters. The attacking team can create majorities.
Der dürfte aber auch
He could go in here too, and he'd be allowed to dribble too, then I have all the elements in here.
Das heißt, wenn der Ball
I like to play this with no out balls.
den Ball, das hat den Vorteil,
This has the advantage that we enforce the focus. I don't have throw-ins or corners, but instead, the ball is out and the keeper has the ball, so we go back into the back three.
in die Dreierkette reingehen. In der Animation sehen
In the
wir,
animation, we will see team tactical shiftings.
Torwart hat hier den Ball, wie gerade
Therefore, the keeper opens the game, and here we see, because it is allowed, the 6 coming into this central Xabi Alonso position.
Position. Daraufhin merkt,
The player in the frontal third will notice that if they are playing majority here, they will be short-handed in the next zone.
das heißt, kommt jetzt hier rein.
Thus, he gets in here to better the numerical relation, but also to occupy this new position of number 6. Here, I, as a coach, have to make him understand that.
Zonenspieler haben noch den Vorteil, dass sie
The players in the zones have the advantage that the opponents always stand in order and play in rows, as you can see here. They don't go around loosely, but I have them in the formations I want. 4-4-2, or here it would be 2-3-3-2. And can keep them there, and if he dribbles, I have a similar situation as I presented it in the solutions before.
ähnliche Situation habe, wie ich sie vorhin in den Spiellösungen präsentiert habe. Das heißt, andribbeln auf den Spieler zu.
This means dribbling towards this player, here is the outer defender. Then, here we are much closer to the game. In this case, he plays, and in the last third, we want to score goals and thus can push behind again.
Nachschieben. Im letzten Drittel
In the last third, we normally would not have a majority, but in this game type, it is possible.
nächste Spielform, die dann immer
The next game type, this becoming more and more realistic, also is something like a game in zones.
Das heißt,
This means I play 8 against 9, short-handed at first.
erstmal in Unterzahl.
It is right considering creating chances to score, but wrong concerning the build-up of the game.
Deswegen,
Therefore, we here, in this first area, create this 2+.
das heißt, wir starten mit
We start with 2 centre-backs, but one player can create a majority. This would be him.
ansonsten ist das hier wie
Other than that, it is to be seen as a zone. A passing goal in the middle and out here dribbling goals. As soon as this passing or dribbling goal is passed over, it is completely open.
mit der Abseitslinie hier.
Then we play 8 against 9 with the offside line here, and it is played until the ball is in the goal with no out.
Klappen wir irgendwelche
The line of offside sometimes is the reason for some game types not to work because it is forgotten. Then it has to be incorporated.
vielleicht etwas weiter vor.
Therefore, maybe as a hint,
Ja, so ein Spielfall.
if I have no line of offside, the Blues might come forward a little more, and this might be a behaviour not to be seen on the weekends during the games. All this in moving pictures. We have the dribbling goals in the spaces, the centre-back has to dribble from out of the back three,
Aus der Dreierkette auch mal wirklich andribbelt. Also da muss ich ein bisschen gucken, dass ich das
so I have to be careful to position this in the right spaces.
und wieder im Zentrum
In the centre again is the passing goal, a red player has to move around.
dann wieder bewegen muss.
Here, the offside line is displayed again.
Der Torwart öffnet wieder.
The goalkeeper opens the game, and we see the movements here that I can request as a coach and that I can train.
Trainer einfordern.
Position of the 6, new 8. The new position of the 6 is filled in from another central midfielder, and here I have my back 3 formation.
Hier wieder mein gewohntes Bild Dreierkette. Ich kann den Ball schnell
I can shift quickly to get into dribbling, or if they defend very badly, I can pass through here.
hier auch mal den Pass durchspielen. In dem Fall wird
In this case, a shift happens, and he can dribble. Now we have this 3 against 2 situation if he cooperates.
gespielt werden. Wie gesagt, jetzt ist
This can be played out, as I've said. Now the game is completely open, and now they can move up, and if white captures the ball, they can counter.
das Kontern. Das heißt,
Of course, I can alter that, saying white has the right to attack the next time, and maybe even has a different focus.
diese Kappen
Then I could use those caps differently, but this would be a focus for red.
im ersten Drittel
In the first third, a game in zones in a majority, with the ways out by passing or dribbling, and afterwards being short-handed to create chances.
Nachhinein in Unterzahl, um Torchancen herauszuspielen. Hier gleiche Feldgröße.
Same. Larger size of the pitch, 8 against 8. Looks complicated, but it is not. We marked 2 vertical blue zones in here. They are displayed a little darker than the rest of the field, and the simple rule would be you play 8 against 8, but in those vertical zones you can dribble and move how you want and have as many contacts with the ball as you want. If you are not in those zones, you only have 2 or maybe later 1 contact. Okay, now I've created a natural behavior and we'll see that the centre-backs in those spaces maybe dribble. But they can only do that if they've been played open. How can I do this? Through a back 3 formation, for example. Then I have solutions I can work with again. In such game types, I can also always give out a basic formation beforehand. When playing 8 against 8, I could say you play 3-3-2. Then they definitely play against 2 strikers, which would be realistic. Or I could say you play 10 against 10. Then I really play in formations of 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 and play against an opponent using these provoking rules. And still I will see my shifts during this game and also my game towards the second ball, and still I will see good pressing. All aspects combined, but the focus lays on the back 3. In the overview of this animation, something is displayed again. The offside line, it is marked in because it is very important. Goalkeeper opens the game. In the blue zones, we have a free game. He can dribble there. Ideally, we here have the 6 coming in. He here plays against one of the strikers. In the first seminar, I discussed why this would make sense. Now the ball is shifted quickly and well. Now he can dribble here, 2 against 1, played through. Now the ball is in another zone where only 2 and later 1 contact is allowed to be played with. Maybe I here have finishes with only 1 contact. Then I have the dribbling, the crossing pass, and the finish combined. Tactically, I can play 10 against 10 and theoretically play the entire pitch or from box to box, whatever I like. Everything is trained. Pressing, opposing pressing, building up the game, but the back 3 formation will be more frequent. And this is the goal, to be able to help the players in those situations. This would be the end of the practical part. I hope you now have many training types for yourself in mind, but also hope you realize my hints and tips and don't only copy training types but develop a good feeling for how to coach this, what and how I can steer this, and how to focus on different aspects in the same exercise. And I hope you will have fun